Welcome to another podcast episode. Of course, this is Matt Phillips, founder of Pro Athlete Advantage, and I am so excited to be back with you today, as I am, I think, on all these podcast episodes. But today I get to introduce you to David Kallery, DK also, as he's known to his employees and friends. But David is actually the president of Inspirato, and if you have not checked out Inspirato, you need to. It is Inspirato.com, Inspirato.com. It is actually a membership program to get access to the world's most exclusive vacation home. So if you travel and want a membership model and want access to just fabulous homes around the world, check out Inspirato. But I actually found out about DK through one of my mastermind group members, one of my squad members. And this guy, Cody, actually kept bragging about DK, about the president of his company, and talked about his leadership and how he has this just giving mindset, one of the most humble leaders he's ever known and worked for. And I was very blessed that Cody actually introduced me to DK, and we got to go have coffee here in downtown Denver, and then I got to go interview him, which is the basis of this podcast. David is honestly one of the most humble leaders that I've ever come across. He told me, actually, when we met, he's like, I don't know why you want to interview me. I'm not the most exciting person in the world, and I think you're going to find that is completely false, as I told him. I truly love sitting down with him and talking about life, business, leadership, mindset. And you are going to walk away, I guarantee today, with just golden nuggets of knowledge that you're going to be able to implement in your life. You're going to learn a lot from DK. I promise you that. Now, DK, just a little background. Like I said, he's the president of Inspirato right now. He's actually held other executive roles with exclusive resorts. He was actually COO and senior vice president of sales and marketing for them. He actually began his career with UPS, was with UPS for 15 years, and then actually went to Visa to serve as vice president for product operations as well. He has been in leadership positions with 2 venture-backed startups as well, and is just making a huge difference at Inspirato right now. I think what is so unique as well with Inspirato, this membership model, it's a very unique approach to travel. And again, go check out the website, but you're going to absolutely love it. It's something that I think is just fascinating in the way that people are so creative in creating these different business models. So with David, again, we're going to cover a lot, from his routines to what his philosophy on leadership is, to what perseverance and mental toughness really means to him. We're talking about actually even how to hire people and who he looks for, what types of people, and he's got some fabulous advice at the end that he's going to leave you with that's actually going to blow you away. So please listen to this interview. You're going to absolutely love it. I am excited to introduce you now to the one and only DK, David Kallery, president of Inspirato.
David, thanks so much for taking your time and being with me today.
No worries, Matt. I've been looking forward to it. Thank you.
This is awesome. Invite. No, absolutely. And we met, a couple months ago now, and we're in your office right now, and we met at a coffee shop, just I can actually see the coffee shop from where we're at out the window, and was very fortunate and blessed to get introduced to you by a friend of mine who works at your company. And when a quality person introduces a quality person, that makes my life so much easier. So we had a great coffee. I'm thrilled to be here and to just talk about mindset and talk about leadership and just dive into your life and kind of the journey you've been on, the path you've been on. And I learned so much in that coffee. I wish I frankly would have recorded that.
Oh my gosh.
We could have cut out the extra meeting, I guess. But it was such a blast. So I'm so just blessed and honored to be with you today. So thank you again.
Well, Matt, thank you. I felt the same energy. It's one of the great things about life, right? When you meet somebody and you immediately hit it off and feel that energy, it's a beautiful thing. So I've been looking forward to reconnecting with you. So thanks for coming over.
Awesome, absolutely. And I've got some questions that to take you through. And really where I want to start off is around this kind of mental toughness definition, because that was kind of the kickoff to our coffee, was talking about mindset and mental toughness. We talked about baseball. We talked about kind of how you grew up and where you grew up and how that's transformed into who you are. But before we dive into a little bit of that, because I do want to provide the listeners some little background beyond just that you're president of Inspirato. There's a lot more depth to you. But as you think about like mental toughness, how do you define it? What kind of words, people, phrases, like what pops into your head when you hear somebody's mentally tough?
So it's a great question. I think that if I just think of a couple words that pop into my head, two immediately are consistency and perseverance, right? To me, the people that are the toughest mentally are the ones that can really figure out a way to shut out all the outside distractions, all the noise, all the pressures around them, no matter what they're doing, right? And a great athlete is able to do that, a great business person, a great father or a great mother, right? I mean, there's lots of pressures in your home, lots of noise, lots of things going on, and I think the person that that can demonstrate great toughness is one that can sort of block that out and keep those pressures and those noises and distractions from taking them off of their plan. Yes. And they persevere, right? They're able to stick to their plan and perform at a consistent level because they're able to shut out those distractions.
Yes.
So those are that's generally what I think of when I think of mental toughness.
Well, it's so key, right? I mean, I think I probably say this on every podcast I record, but this consistency piece, I think, is massive because, I talk about the compounding effect, right? That, from an investment perspective, from a finance perspective, everybody knows the compounding effect, right? If, you save this much money and then stop, and then over time it just compounds and you retire with millions, depending obviously on how much you invest.
Sure.
But it's that compounding effect, and that's all about that consistency in investing, and consistency in the market going up, all that sort of stuff. And that's the same thing I believe with like running a company or being a great father. It's like, how consistent can I be? It doesn't have to be massive change, massive things I do, but if I can be consistent on the little things, that's what matters.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that, Matt, starts with very simple things, right? What time do you wake up every day? What time do you hit the gym in the morning? I'm a morning person, so there's others that love to get their exercise in after work. I start my day with exercise and going to the gym, and I try very, very hard to do that at the same time every single day. I see the same people. I don't have to think about any distractions because there virtually are no distractions. I eat at the same time. I have the same routine at work. Obviously I'll be faced with different challenges throughout the day. I'll see different people, but I try to have the same routine. I'll block certain times on my calendar where I'll spend time thinking about the business or thinking about some of the challenges that we have, and I try to do that at the same time when I know my mind is peaking or my ability to think through something complex is peaking, which is generally in the morning. My afternoons look the same. I try to get out of here at the same time every day. That's sometimes very, very difficult, but just this whole notion of being in a routine, and if you want consistent performance, you have to build a consistent platform to stand on, and I try very, very hard. Didn't do that in my 20s, by the way.
No, okay.
It really took learning and some setbacks through my 20s and probably early 30s. But for probably the last 15 years, definitely over the last 10 years, I've just really tried to attack my day in a very, very consistent manner.
So what was the changing moment where you said you went through those 20s and it was just doing whatever? Was there a certain time where you're like, I have to get this in order, or was it learned? Was it like, what was that kind of that trigger?
I think a lot of it was just it's probably two things. Some of it was just my own performance, recognizing that I was not performing at the level that I could be, and just not achieving what I wanted to achieve, not hitting the goals that I wanted to hit, whether those be broad career goals or just execution goals within the business. I think the other thing that happened to me in my mid-30s, and maybe we'll talk about this more as we progress through the discussion, but I had a really big career change. I spent the early part of my career at a couple of really big companies. When I was 18 years old, I was fortunate enough to get a job working for UPS. I put my way through school working with them, and then I spent 15 years there. I thought it was going to be a summer job, and I ended up spending 15 years there. And then I left for another big company. I went to Visa, the credit card company in San Francisco. So two massive organizations, global organizations, and at about 33, 34 years old, made the switch to move from large company into more of an entrepreneurial effort, and was the third employee at a small startup in San Francisco. And I think when you make that type of transition, you really have to reset how you approach your day to day, and that was sort of a jumping off point for me. I had been thinking about this whole notion of consistency and putting my life into a consistent framework, but really didn't action it until I made that transition into a smaller firm.
So I love talking about the big to small company shift, because I think it's fascinating. I can't remember if we talked about this during the coffee, but I think as an entrepreneur, every fear, doubt, worry, like limiting belief, like anything that you're dealing with, because we all carry around things from our past, right? That are getting in our way. But I feel like as an entrepreneur, when you go to that small company environment, when you wake up, they're like right in front of your face. And it's like, even you're trying to brush your teeth and you're trying to like look around and try to figure out like, how do I don't want to look at that, but I'm just trying to brush my teeth here.
Right.
But I think in order to be successful, you have to deal with those. You have to. Otherwise you can't move the needle, I don't believe. I think in a big company, I think for a longer time you can maybe get away with it, but it catches up. Would you disagree with that?
Yeah, there's nowhere to hide when you're in a smaller entrepreneurial company. I mean, I feel hugely blessed that I had the training and the experience that I did with large companies. As I said earlier, I put my way through school working at UPS, but the education that I received by working there, the training, leadership training, was worth millions to me.
Yes.
But when you move and you transition to a smaller firm, there's really nowhere to hide, right? I mean, you're responsible for every aspect of the business, and I often say that there's a paradox with a startup, right? There's probably no time in a company's history where you have more needs than when you're starting a business. I mean, literally the first 6 to 12 months, you have more needs than you'll ever have, because there's nothing there, right? It's a hunk of wet clay, but you have the fewest resources to apply against those needs, and it's this paradox that I've always thought about. And as you said, there's really nowhere to run or hide. You have to face every challenge, and it was a great learning experience to make that transition.
I bet. So what was, like when you made that transition coming from the corporate world, what was the biggest kind of learning, or what did you take with you from the corporate world that you're like, I was able to leverage this, whether it was leadership or like whatever?
Well,
I told you I was going to go.
Yeah, I love it. I'd say that the biggest thing that I learned in my first of all, I worked for some incredible people. Mm-hmm. The first real boss that I had at UPS was a gentleman by the name of John Jones. John was an incredible guy. I think at one point I learned that he had 2 or 3 brothers, one that was murdered, and 2 that were killed in Vietnam. Just an incredible human being, an incredible leader, self-taught, never went to college, but worked his way up the ranks at UPS. And I worked for this guy for probably a handful of years, and he taught me so much about leading people and leadership in general. One of the things that John did that I try to do to this day, and people joke about it here, is I try to really connect with people on a personal level. There's 500 people here at Inspirato, and I think I probably have 475 names down. And John taught me that. I mean, we worked at a large facility in St. Louis together, and there was a couple thousand employees, and I bet you he knew 85, 90% of the employees by name, and he just really connected with people. And it wasn't just that he knew their name, he knew something about them and something about their family, some challenge that was going on. It was remarkable how he connected with people. And that's probably been the single biggest thing that I've tried to bring. Obviously when I was very young at the time, and it influenced the way I thought about leadership tremendously. And eventually when I made the transition into smaller companies, I tried to do that. I tried to really connect with people on a personal level, a sincere and authentic personal level.
Yes.
And I think it's probably been the single biggest thing that's helped me in my career.
Why is that so important for a company?
Well, I think people, it doesn't matter if you're a baby boomer or you're a millennial, you want to work with people that you feel that connection to. Nobody wants to be snowed. People want to feel like the people they work with care for them and care about the challenges they're faced with.
Yes.
And, I think the most important thing for any business, one of the most important things for a business, is to have employees that feel excited and energized and that have a great attitude. And the quickest way to a shitty attitude is to have a boss or people that you work with that don't care. So I think it's hugely important that employees feel that connection from the leadership team of a company and feel like it's authentic and sincere.
I think that's such a massive, it's just a massive point, because it's this belief, and I love looking at the different generations too, and millennials versus Y and X, and I don't even know what's coming up now, and I lose track of this. And I think you talk about the older generations that they're willing to put up with a lot more kind of crap, basically, right?
Sure.
Let's put it that way. So getting a job, even though you hate it, but you're going to work there for 30 years.
Yeah.
And then you come down to a little younger generation, and they're kind of on the fence. And then you look at the millennials, and they're like, heck no, I want to work for someplace where I believe in the mission. I want to be part of something great. I want to work with people. And they're not willing to put up with that stuff.
Right.
But I think underlying all of it, I don't care how old you are, how young you are, I think it's so important. You want to be part of a team. You want to actually enjoy going to work. You want to enjoy the people around you. And the people is probably the biggest part. I mean, even if your daily task is not the most fun. I've got a relatively small business. I don't like small business. I don't like those words. I have a business.
Right.
It just happens to be I don't have a lot of employees at the moment, right? So very select few. But I think it's massive when it comes to growing anything in life. It's like, do you care? Are you willing to take time to get to know them, to develop those people, just be there for them? And the cascading impact, I think, is huge.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, you look at a company like Inspirato, and our job at the end of the day is to serve an affluent consumer who's taking a vacation, right?
Yes.
And to do that, and to do it the way that we've really designed it, you have to have that. You have to have a great attitude. You have to have a serving attitude. That's a big part of our culture here. Mm-hmm. We look for. We actually really try very, very hard to find people that are energized by serving, that are givers, natural givers. I read a book. I think we spoke about this the first time we met. I read a book by Adam Grant, who I think is an incredible author and professor at Wharton, mm-hmm. and he wrote a book called Give and Take. And his premise in the book was that there's 3 types of people, and I'm oversimplifying it.
Sure.
Please forgive me.
Sure.
But
Sorry, Adam.
Hopefully Adam never hears this. But the basic premise of the book is that there's 3 types of people in the world. There's givers. They walk into a room and they fill the room with energy. They'll give their time, their energy, their money, their spirit. They're just nonstop with giving to others, and they don't worry about giving. It's part of who they are. There's takers, and they're the opposite, right?
Yes.
They walk into a room, they suck the energy out, they're always looking for a handout, they usually have a victim's mindset, and they drain a company. But then there's a group in the middle, and it's a large group, and Adam would argue that at times they can be even more damaging. Takers are easy to identify. He calls them matchers, the people that sit in the middle. And they keep score, right? So Matt, you gave to me today, so tomorrow I will give to you. And if you don't give to me, I'm not going to give to you. I mean, think of how incredibly bad it would be to be in a relationship right? We're both married men,
Yes.
right? I would hate it if my wife was a matcher, right? She's a giver. And,
good point.
And
That's a very good point.
we try hard here at Inspirato. It's almost been a roadmap. It's definitely been a roadmap for me personally, but for many of the leaders in the company to try to build a company with a disproportionately high number of givers, right? We're serving a consumer who's going on a vacation, and we really have to have people that want to give, that aren't afraid to bend over backwards and do whatever it takes to make sure that our customers feel that from us. And this all goes back to what we were talking about a minute ago, right? It's hard to do that if you don't have a great attitude and if you don't feel good about the work that you're doing. And it's hard to feel good about the work you're doing if you work for a crummy boss, right? Yes. So that's how it all ties back.
That is so true. So let's talk for a second, because obviously from a life cycle perspective, it's like it starts with recruiting, right? Of how do I surround myself at the core? I'm surrounding myself with these like-minded people,
yep.
right? Focused on that servant leadership type stuff. So it starts with recruiting. Do you find yourself like developing others just maybe not even formally ad hoc with like, okay, let's really emphasize this service piece to what we do? Or do people around here just, they get it, they do it because of that disproportionate number?
No, I mean, look, it's something that we talk about a lot, and it's super, super hard. I'd be less than honest if I told you that, it's easy to figure out how to find these disproportionate givers, right? Or to build a company filled with them. It's very, very difficult. I mean, we're honest, we're upfront. If I interview anybody, one of the first things that I try to get to is just a very honest dialogue around what it means to work for a company like ours and to be a giver, right? And what the expectation will be. And if you don't have that mindset, maybe it's not the right place for you. Now, I don't know that every person in our company is doing that, and it's just a tough thing to really glean out of an interview in a single interview. But it's definitely something that we're focused on.
Yes.
And even after a person gets here, it's part of our culture, and it's something that we talk about a lot.
Yes, I love that. Well, it goes back to that consistency you talked about earlier, right? That even if something bad comes up, we may have gone off track a little bit, we're going to get back on track.
That's right.
We're going to be consistent. That's the mindset we're going to have going forward.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that. So much I want to unpack here. I love the morning routine. I love the waking up, going to the gym right away. This may seem like a very random question, but like, what do you eat in the morning? Is there something like you have a go-to that's the only thing you eat? Yeah,
so I usually as soon as I get up, I'll fix my first water of the day. So I love flavored water. I'll throw a big Nalgene bottle with some flavored water, and I will consume half that Nalgene before I've left the house. I love hydrating right away, and generally, again, being a creature of habit, I'll put down a banana between my house and the gym.
Okay.
And then I'll get a good run or a good workout in right out of the gate. I'll lift weights 2 to 3 times a week, and I'll run probably 5 to 6 times a week. Treadmill running is generally what I like doing.
Okay.
I'm one of those crazy fools that actually enjoy putting CNBC on the treadmill and catching up on what's going on in the world, and trying to log 4 to 6 or 7 miles on a good day in the morning. And then after my workout, right before I come into the office, I'll usually grab something. It might be some eggs or something high in protein, low in fat, that I can really be energized to, that will take me through to lunch.
Love it. Do you vary that morning meal very much?
I wish I could vary it more. There's not Lodo is great. I love living and working down here, but the selections are not bountiful in the morning.
Good point.
Right? So it's usually either a breakfast burrito or a breakfast bowl filled with some eggs and some beans.
Love it.
Most days,
I love
truthfully.
it.
Just high in protein and something that I know will keep me energized until noon.
Love that.
And then throughout the day, it's just tons and tons of water, and you read it everywhere, and it's obviously here in Colorado, it's super important because of how dry it is. But I'll probably do five Nalgenes a day. With just some flavored water.
What kind of this? Again, random questions, but like I want people to actually go out and use this stuff.
Yeah.
Like what type of flavor do you use? or
I use
brand
these
or
little
whatever?
packets. I can't, you know what? We'll come back to it because I won't
Perfect.
remember.
Perfect.
Sorry, it's these little. My wife buys them for me, and I can't even
No worries.
remember.
I'm going to put a
brand
link.
name.
I'm going to ask because I'm not a huge fan of like just plain water,
Yeah,
but if there's
yeah.
a little flavor to it, it's awesome.
A little bit of flavor in there, a little bit.
Yeah.
I think there's even. She buys a couple of them that might even have a little bit of caffeine. I don't drink. I've never had a cup of coffee in my life. Weird thing about me. I had one sip one time. I hated it, so I never tried it. And I'll have tea every once in a while.
Yes.
But it's my only real source of a little bit of caffeine in the morning is
Awesome.
the flavored water packets.
I love it. I'll have to put a link because I'm always looking for different hacks and stuff. And my wife will put her top 2 recommendations, just being having her own nutrition business, is you put a little pinch of salt in there, or lemon water, or like fresh squeezed lemon.
Sure.
Not lemonade for everybody listening, but like just fresh squeezed lemon, and it just helps the cells absorb it even better.
Absolutely.
But yeah, the more fluid you can drink, the better. So that's awesome. Okay, that's enough with the random morning routine thing. Be consistent is the message, everyone. So, a couple questions for you. I prepped you for this, but I said, what was one kind of defining moment in your life, and how did it impact you? Did you have one of those moments where it was just like, boom, right there? Like,
yeah, it was great that you prepped me for it because it actually made me think a little bit. And
Good.
I joked with you before we started that I'm not that interesting. I mean, I think that we all have things that happened as we were growing up that sort of shape who we are, right? And I was 15, 16 years old when my family moved from Boston, which is a great place to grow up, a strong culture. Bostonians are tough. And we moved to St. Louis, and that was obviously a huge change in my life. I met my wife there in St. Louis, and my family is still there today. That was a big thing. I think obviously meeting my wife and having the family that we have today all came from that. My dad passing away at a young age was a defining moment for me. I was in my early 30s when he passed away, and he was very young. He was, not even 60, and that changed my life for sure. I kept in fairly decent shape. He died of heart disease. Obviously did not take great care of himself. Was a thin man. If you looked at him, you'd say, "Wow, he was." Looked sharp and, didn't have looked as though he weighed the right weight, and but was a smoker and had a very stressful lifestyle and never exercised. And I, went crazy after that. I really, really increased my intensity around taking care of myself, getting the proper amount of rest. This whole notion of being in a routine and not varying from that routine really came as a result of his passing. And then I guess business-wise, it's what I said earlier. I mean, I'd say the biggest defining moment was, trying to muster the guts to quit a job at Visa at the time, where, I was making more money than, truthfully, Matt, I thought I'd ever make as an adult.
Right.
In a great role helping Visa, and my boss at the time was the COO of the company, and helping him think through how Visa was going to change. This was in the sort of late 90s, early 2000s, and mustering up the guts to walk away from that and to go to a smaller company. And I feel like it was the best decision I could have ever made. I never would have pitched a VC. I never would have hired the second, third, fourth, fifth employee.
Yes.
Never would have been able to sell a business. And it just, so many things probably never would have happened had I stayed in the confines of a large company, which has its challenges. I mean, I don't want to diminish the fact that there are large companies out there where people can grow and face challenges that make them much, much better leaders. But for me personally, bridging away from that in the 16 or 17 years that I spent doing it, and then going into a smaller company and facing all of those challenges was definitely a defining moment.
Yes.
And I think has really made me a more well-rounded leader, business person, in so many, many ways.
Absolutely. Well, I think to talk about that last one for a little bit, because I think it's, I talk a lot to different risk takers or people that they want to do something, but they don't pull the trigger. They have these like hopes and dreams, but they don't take the step necessary to actually do that.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of people out there, right, that may be on the fence of even switching from a company to company. I don't care what the size, or starting a company, or asking a person on a date. I mean, it runs the gamut of like these risks that we take throughout life and kind of putting ourselves out there. And, it was a big thing for me too, where I've moved from big company to starting my own thing. And
Yep.
there were lots of ups and downs along the way, and still challenges every day. And I screw things up every day, and I do good things every day, but there's still always the challenge there. But, as you look back to like you taking that risk, not necessarily going from big to small company. I mean, take even the company size out of it, just saying you taking that risk. How did you kind of mentally prepare yourself to be in a place comfortable enough where you knew it's time? I'm comfortable enough, I can go. I can take that risk.
Yeah, so those are big questions and tough things. I mean, I had 2 children at the time. I lived in San Francisco, which is not an inexpensive place to live, right? So you have the challenges of making sure that I'm going to be able to keep a roof over the head. I'll go back for a second and just tell you what, one of the main motivators to me making the jump was that I saw myself getting into a little bit of negative headspace. I mentioned my dad.
Yes.
All our parents give us great lessons. One of the things that was figuratively beat into my head, not literally, but that my dad talked a lot about as I was growing up was avoiding at all costs the victim's mindset, right? And how incredibly powerful, in a negative way, a victim's mindset can be. People get themselves into a position where they feel like they've been victimized, and obviously there are people that have been victimized. I'm not talking about that at all.
Yes.
That is separate and distinct from what I'm describing
absolutely.
here. I'm really talking about, being in a role where you feel like you should have been promoted 3 or 4 times, or, you should make more money, or you should have more responsibility. That mindset is very dangerous. I was approaching not a victim's mindset, but I was getting some of the headspace of that, and really just felt like there was more for me, and really harkened back to my dad had just passed away months before I made this big decision, and really harkened back to a lot of those lessons that he had taught me about. And that was a big part of what drove me to have the motivation to make the step. I felt like I could do more. I felt like I could grow more. I felt like there were bigger challenges out there for me. And rather than sort of sitting in that victim's mindset, I made the move. And again, I don't want to minimize. For a lot of people, they can't do that for whatever reason. They put themselves in a position, maybe it's financially, or with the responsibilities that they have for their family, where they can't do that. I was blessed enough. I've always been a saver. I've always been a person that's tried to live a fairly conservative lifestyle, spend less than what I make, and some of that enabled me to do it. But it was really just coming up with making the decision that I did not want to get into that victim's mindset, where I felt like I could do more but didn't actually do it, and that helped me pull the trigger.
Gosh,
Does it make sense?
It makes complete sense. And my father passed away. It was on November 8th this year. It'll be 4 years, and just hearing you talk, it just blew me back to like when he passed and his battle with cancer and all that. And I remember out of that, for me, watching him go through that cancer battle. I know you didn't know him, but with like a smile on his face, and he taught me so much in that 2-year battle he had before he passed away. And then just hearing people talk about him at his funeral, and the words they used of like just integrity and honesty and others before self, and you hear those types of words. And I remember talking with him, before, many times during that battle and right before he passed away. and I just had this thing inside me ignite as well of like, there's more, and I want to take advantage of the time I have, because he passed away at a pretty early age, 60s as well, and but there was just this fire inside me that was lit of like, I want more out of life. I don't want to stay here and just do status quo, and I want to find out what's possible in this world. Now that's why I get so fired up. I'm like, I can't remember if I told you this or not, but I have two driving forces in my life, and one is to wake up every day, which is a gift from my dad, and something my parents instilled in me at a young age, but especially with my dad passing, is I want to utilize my God-given gifts and talents to their fullest every day. That's one of my driving forces. I think we have an opportunity, and my dad left me that, knowing that if I have till tomorrow or 60 or 100 or maybe 140 with the way technology is going, right? I want to find out, what I'm made of. And let's go do some cool stuff. And the other driving force, I want to show my kids what's possible in this world. And if they want to start a business, go start a business. If my daughter wants to play for the, USA volleyball team, go play for the USA volleyball team. It's going to take work, and it's going to take a great attitude and all these other things we learn. So true. But you can do it. And that you just blew me back to like when my dad passed away. So, and I hear that in your voice of like, even just a few months, that had to have been a big driving force. Like, now you're taking care of yourself. You've really amped up the intensity, as you put it, on taking care of yourself, and then to have, just to have that opportunity put in front of you and be like, let's go see what's out there. Yeah. Like I said, it was a big defining moment. His passing, and then also that big career change, both happening sort of in a 6 to 8 month period. That's nice. Yeah. That's huge. And I have no regrets. All of those moves were the right moves for me. And who knows? I mean, had I stayed at UPS, what would life have looked like, right? Or if I'd stayed at Visa, what would life have looked like? You can't worry about that. And I feel incredibly blessed to have worked with the companies that I have, and have been really in the position that I'm in today as a result of making those decisions. That's incredible. Yeah. And for those of you listening right now, I know a few people who work here at Inspirato, and they say that DK, as he's known around here, right? Not David, DK is probably the best leader they've ever had. And I think you all start understanding that this service mentality, and I wish you all should meet DK, right? You're being kind. And get to sit across from me. It's awesome. It's absolutely awesome. Let me ask you something. A couple more questions. I want to be cognizant of your time and just very respectful of that. But what kind of keeps you up at night? Right now, what's kind of your biggest worry, biggest concern, thing you're thinking about most? And I think you sleep well, so maybe it's not you given night. But no, I actually don't sleep well sometimes. So look, Inspirato is at that. We're at an interesting stage right now. We're definitely not a startup. We've been around for 8 years now, right? So we're a mid-sized growth company, and we're profitable now, and 500 plus employees. I'd say so the biggest things that are on my mind are, number one, the 500 employees. That's a lot different level of responsibility. Yes. And I know, there's CEOs out there that manage, I mentioned UPS 86 times in this conversation. They probably have over 400,000 employees now, right? So Dave Abney, who's the CEO of UPS, he's got a lot of responsibility, but 500 people is a lot. And I think about that a lot. You don't worry about it. You don't dwell on it, but every move that we make as a company has to be put through that filter of, there's 500 lives here, 500 people rely on us to make the right moves and to think about how we're going to grow the company and to not make, a critical mistake that hurts the company in a material manner. Yes. So there are evenings where I think about that, not dwell on it, but think about it. I'd say the other thing that it's funny, over the last couple months, I've been thinking a lot about the balance of trying to be aggressive in what we do as a growth company, and as a company that, we've raised almost $100 million worth of outside capital. So, when you raise $100 million in outside capital, you want
you want your investors to receive a return on that.
Yes.
So there's no sitting around hoping that, you know, over time things get better. You're constantly thinking about, how do we accelerate growth? How do we really use the capital that we've brought in and the platform that we've built to accelerate growth? And one of the challenges that's been on my mind lately is, how do we find the balance of doing enough to grow, but not doing too much? I see a lot of companies, a lot of people take on too much. And you know, there's a lot of smart people out there that write about this notion of, you know, not taking on too many things, becoming very, very competent in 2 or 3 things, doing them really, really, really well. You know, I think, you know, one of the greatest CEOs of our time, obviously, is Jeff Bezos. And, you know, they're doing a lot more now, but for a long time, you know, it was, you know, a lot of blocking and tackling, building a lot of infrastructure, building the team, creating the brand. And, you know, it's easy for us to get lost today when you see innovation after innovation after innovation from them, but most of that is born from them building an incredible platform over many, many years where they were very, very focused. So right now, just one of the big things that's on my mind is just trying to figure out that balance, the balance of, you know, how many things to take on, how many new initiatives, how many things do we try in the market or even within the company that might not be market facing, that just take resources and time and energy. And at times I think the balance for us is that we're taking on too much, right? I think there are times where I feel like we should drop 1 or 2 initiatives and focus on the other 3 that we're doing and do them really, really, really well and try to achieve greatness and excellence in those versus just, you know, having too many things on the plate. You know, I know that sounds trite, but that's sort of the way that I think about it, and that's one of the things that's been on my mind a lot.
It's huge. As a leadership team, are you guys talking about that a lot, of like what priorities shift, what stays, what goes? Is that how you guys kind of work through it? Is that talking and data?
We do. We talk. We meet as a team every Friday from 9 to noon. Okay. The entire executive team gets together. There isn't a thing that's happening in the company that we don't share with each other. I mean, we're a very empowering organization, so there's leaders that run different parts of our company, and maybe during the week they're not spending a lot of time, but every Friday we're together. And we spend that time sort of debating and discussing this whole issue of, you know, what to take on. Part of the issue, Matt, is that, you know, there's a lot of bright, shiny objects out there, right? There's other companies that are out there doing interesting things and innovating, and it's easy to fall victim to, you know, seeing that and running towards it. You know, so-and-so is coming out with a new offering, therefore we must follow, or before they come out with something, we want to innovate. And, you know, I just think it's a challenge that every company faces, but especially smaller firms, mid-sized companies that are really, you know, just establishing their presence in the market. I think, you know, it's easy to run into this type of challenge.
Well, I think what I hear is like it's run informed.
Yeah, be smart, right? Just be smart, run informed. You know, really think. We just started a group here within the company that's really taking a lot of the initiatives that we're thinking about, and they're trying to put a little bit more form and substance around it, and really look at the market, look at the consumer, the potential consumer response on something like this before we go out and apply other resources towards it. And you know, we've done that in the past, but maybe not been as disciplined. And we're really, really trying right now to really make sure that something feels like it's really going to have the bang that we want, and it's the right place to apply our resources.
Okay. Yeah, that's one of my kryptonite, I think, is the shiny objects, and off I go to.
Right? You read an article, and the next thing you know, you're wanting to go, you know, come up with a whole new initiative.
Exactly.
Put 50 people behind it, and that's tough to do.
Switch the whole model. Exactly. I think it's well. So what I've heard about UPS is it's very data-based decisions. That's what I used to have a boss of mine back when I was in corporate America, who worked for UPS, and one of his sayings his boss used to bring up all the time was that you can't argue the facts.
Yeah.
And so it was very data driven, and he at the time was in charge of like drivers and how efficient they were being with their routes, something like that. And the numbers would come in and the data would come in, and he's like, well, no, but this happened, and the boss is sitting there saying you can't argue the facts.
Yeah.
It's data. Now, it's good to go with gut as well, and there are explanations, but it's important to make those decisions as well with data.
Absolutely, yeah. And look, we're a company that's driven by an entrepreneur who has incredible gut instincts. He basically founded the industry,
yes,
and has incredible gut instincts, but he's also disciplined enough to look at the data and
yes,
to really use data and information to help us make decisions. We try to find that balance. We won't bore your listeners with all the details about UPS, but I think they were decades ahead of many, many companies. They're such a private company, and we're a private company for so long that a lot of people don't know much about them, but you're exactly right. I mean, back in the long time ago, they were using data like a lot of companies are today. I mean, I manage a small delivery group, and the first thing that I would look at when I came in the morning was a printout of exactly what happened the day before, performance-wise. They were measuring driver performance back in the 60s, 70s. I'm sure they were doing it in the 50s too.
Yes.
Obviously, I don't know much about how they did it way back then, but when I worked there in the 80s, they were way ahead of their time in terms of aggregating large amounts of data and really trying to analyze the business.
Yes.
So way ahead of their time for sure.
Love that. I love that. I wish we had all the time in the world here. Let me ask you 2 more quick questions. So first of all, obviously people to connect with you, Inspirato.com. I'll have links in the show notes and stuff like that. But any other way that you want them to connect or anything to know about Inspirato that you want them to?
Yeah, I mean, my email is really simple. It's just dk@inspirato.com. So I'm always like to meet new folks, and happy to connect that way. I'm also on Twitter. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, but I'm not really on Instagram and Facebook. I flirted with a little bit of a presence on both, but nothing serious. And I really love Twitter. I mean, I know there's detractors and lovers of Twitter, but at David Kallery on Twitter. And I personally I consume probably 90% of what I consume through Twitter.
Oh, really?
The news that I want to hear about, the bloggers or the writers that I love reading about. I feel like it's just a great curated. Wow, not speaking well today. Curated way of just capturing the information that's important to me from the people whom I believe are important, and so I'm a big fan of Twitter.
Awesome.
Those are probably the best ways to get in touch.
That's perfect. And we'll have links to your Twitter handle and all that stuff too. Last question, then I'll let you go. I want to keep you on the routine with like lunch coming up and stuff like that. I'm kidding, but no. So if you had like one piece of advice for maybe a person in your company, a person listening, a person just walking by on the street, that if they're looking to like get ahead, if they're looking to kind of go next level, what is that piece of advice? So
look, I'd probably say 2 things, and they're sort of diametrically opposed, right? One is think bigger, right? There's a number of people out there that talk about 10x versus 10%. I won't steal from any of them. I'll just speak about it more broadly. But this whole mindset of thinking about how to be 10 times better than your competitor, or produce 10 times more, get 10 times the results, I think is a powerful mindset. We had a group of interns. I think we had 20 interns here from a number of universities all over the U.S. And it was one of the things I said to them before they left. They're getting ready to go out probably next year. I think most of them were juniors, so they're going to get ready to go out into the workforce in the next year or two. And I told them, you're going to work for somebody more than likely, unless you start a company. And whoever you work for probably isn't going to remember if you're 10% better than the person that they had in the role before. They'll be happy. You're not going to get fired for being 10% better, but you're probably not going to change the company if you're 10% better. And I think it's mostly a mindset. Of course, actually producing results that are 10x better is really, really, really hard.
Right.
But I think this mindset of I want to approach everything I do with a 10x mindset. I want to give results that are 10 times better than something anybody has done before. What it really does is it forces you to think in an unconventional way. It forces you to really throw out the status quo and think of a fundamentally new way of approaching something, which I think is very, very, very powerful.
Yes.
So that's probably number one. Having a 10x mindset, a mindset where you say, I want to strive for something that will shock the world, right?
Yes.
If you do 10 times better, your boss is going to remember
you,
right?
bet. You bet.
Probably forever. And then I'll end, I hate ending on this one, but I do see a lot of people that carry this victim's mindset, and I'm a bit of a preacher on it. My dad was a preacher to me, and I feel a little bit like I preach it a lot. People hear me talk about it here, but I believe that there's probably very few things in our lives that aren't within our control. There are things in lives that are out of control.
Sure.
Health circumstances sometimes
Yes.
can be out of our control. And obviously there are other tragic things that happen to people that are often out of your control. Let's put those aside for a moment.
Yes.
Most other things are in our control. If you're in a relationship that is not what you want, you have the power to change that relationship, either by leaving the relationship or doing the things that you can do to influence the relationship.
Yes.
If you're in a role at a company that is not fulfilling what you would like, you have the power to change that. There's so many things within our power, and I tell my kids all the time, focus on how you can change it. Don't focus on being a victim of it. Focus on how you can change those things, and up to and including moving on. I think oftentimes we don't move on quick enough. I won't talk about the details of this, but I was in a role at a point in my career where I probably stayed a year or two or three too long.
Okay.
And if you told me, let's look backwards, David, at your whole career, almost every part of my career I grew and I felt great. I could have changed 2 or 3 years earlier there, and it would have been 2 or 3 better years. Right? But
Right.
too often we don't do that.
Right.
And keeping this mindset of I'm in control and I can change my circumstances, I think is very powerful. When you combine that with a 10x mindset, it's a great combination. Make sense?
Fabulous advice. Fabulous advice. And for those of you listening, I'm going to put all the links to David, to DK, so you can connect with him and check out Inspirato.com. And thank you so much for your time. Just
Matt,
awesome.
I've appreciated it, and it's great to get to know you more, and I appreciate you coming in today.
Thanks
Thank you,
so
sir.
much. Yeah, we'll be in touch.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you.